Tonight is a special board meeting of the USB 453 Board of Education, dealing with their continuous learning plan as required by the State Department. Call the roll. We have Mr. Carney. Here. Mrs. Wells.
Here.
Mrs. Murphy.
Here.
Mrs. Price.
Here.
Mr. Powell.
Here.
And right now, Jack is trying to get into the system, I think, somehow. So now we need to have a motion for adoption of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as read or as listed to us.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Wells seconded it. All those in favor, since we've got our cameras on, can raise a hand. And we have 6-0. Thank you. Now we move on to item 2.01, continuous learning plan, which we all got sent earlier this afternoon.
Yes.
This, as well as you had some questions. I know I had a chance
And it keeps
Get some
asking him
questions
to
on that.
register, and he's clicking on the link
So-
from the email.
Okay, hang on just a second. Sorry, Mr. Darling.
That's okay.
We'll have Jake
Jack.
reach out and resend the link. All he would need to do is click on that link. Jake, can you hear me? Mr. Potter,
Yes, I'm tracking.
will you resend a link to Mr. Goodman?
Absolutely.
All right, sorry, Mr. Darling.
That's okay. Trying to see if Jack can join the meeting there. Why don't we go ahead, Mrs. Wells, if you'd be so kind?
Okay, my first question is, when will this be made available to our families to see the plan, or is that not going to be?
No, as soon as the plan is approved by the board, then we send it to the state, and the state uploads it to their website, and we'll upload it to ours as well.
Okay. And then I'm assuming we've all been getting the updates from KSDE through KASB. We created this plan based on their recommendations.
Absolutely. We took they put forth the education task force that created like the guidelines. Then we adopted through communication with our principals. They had meetings with their building leadership teams. Then our teaching and learning staff, Ms. Batson and Mr. Bodensteiner, along with Dr. Rettelberger for SPED, and Ms. Sloan for HR and all the HR services, went through and created this.
Okay.
So there was more layers of input than just what KSB had put forth. It was also, like I said, principal led, and with the building leadership team involvement as well.
Okay. So my first question about the document itself, in page 5 on the second paragraph, which I'm not sure how I can reference that right now while we're speaking. I guess that's why I wrote that down. It mentions the link grant in there.
Yes.
Is there, it was a set 3-year period of time. Do you think that we're going to be allowed additional time because of this crisis?
It hasn't come up specifically about the link grant and whether there will be an extension. I know that Ms. Batson and Julie have been working on communicating with the state and federal level about the possibility of an extension. Nothing's official been on that, but we were working on an extension we were researching to see if there was an extension prior to the COVID-19 outbreak.
Okay. My next question is on page 8. It's the last question on there in regards to seniors not or getting their graduation requirements. Have we identified how many seniors are in danger of not graduating that are being looked at specifically by their counselors?
No, The counselors and the seniors would know that because that would have probably been a discussion prior to spring break as well.
Okay.
And Christy could address that more readily than myself. But I do know that the counselors and high school admin staff have regular conversations with students that are on that bubble right after the first of the year. So if they have to make up credit
All right, can
or
anybody
get
hear me?
into some,
Yes, Jack, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
so that they can start that process through credit recovery programs that we have available to them.
Okay. Is it typical that we let the families know as well? Or is that strictly between the counselor and the student?
Jake, you want to put Miss Jones in? Hi, Miss Jones. Have you,
Hello.
did you hear Miss Wells's question?
I did. So here's the deal. Yes, our seniors have already been notified if they're in jeopardy of graduating. Their counselors have already sent letters home. In fact, we did send out another list today to all the advisory teachers and all teachers, so they have that as well to look at what seniors are on, could be in jeopardy of graduating. So they are fully aware of what they need, the classes they have to have, where they stand right now, as well as our teachers are aware of that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then my next question is on page 9, when we're addressing the social and emotional needs of our students. What's happening with our therapist at the high school? Because she was directly meeting with students and she was part of the guidance center and us. Is she strictly at the guidance center right now or are we still able to utilize her?
So you want me to go ahead and answer that, sir?
Please.
So she is still doing telecommunication with students. The guidance center has put her on where she can only communicate with them through Zoom and telecommunication. Up until the time that we went to the 10 people in the building, she was actually having students come in and meet with her, but the guidance center has put her on that. So she works in our building some days and then she works from home other days. So our kids are still getting their therapy sessions with them. We also send out information to parents on how to, if they think their student needs help or whatever, to get in communication with us, we can continue that process. So she still is with us, part of our staff, and we're still using her.
Okay, and Christy, I'm really glad that you're on the line because this next question I know you're going to have to answer. On page 10, it specifically mentions our secondary teachers are meeting daily with the advisory students. That seems like a lot, especially with our restrictions right now. Is that a feasible, achievable goal?
Yes, ma'am. So we're 3 hours a day is what the state has said. So 30 minutes a class period. And so our teachers are doing 30 minutes in a normal class, and then our advisory teachers are doing 20 minutes. And that's just really a check-in on our kids to make sure that they're still okay. If there's anything they need, it's just that one person that they see on a regular daily basis that can help them in any way they possibly need. And so we started today with that, and then we'll go again tomorrow. And so any student that they have not made contact with, they're letting the administrators know so that we can try to get a hold of them to find out what's going on.
Okay, so what does that look like? Does that look like a Zoom check-in, like all the students are coming in at once during that 20-minute period of time?
Today and tomorrow, yes, it is. It could, but from here on out, it could be just like a quick email. It could be, hey, I'm on. If you want to, if you need to get on and talk, they could do 2 or 3 of them at a time. Right now, though, it is a whole class is what we're asking for. So kind of to start that back, building that relationship back. And after kids have been out, what is it that you need? Where are you at? That kind of thing.
I'm just wondering, since we're asking the state to approve this plan, do we want to still leave it, even though we're requiring that right now? In the future, I would hate to not meet that.
Right. So I think it's important because I think it helps with that social emotional, even if it's just an email. Because some of our, I know my own son's, his advisory teacher sent out an email last week, just touching base with him to make sure and with the whole with all the families. And so I think it's important to still have that social emotional piece there, that's that one teacher that kids can get to, because our high schoolers, You know, they may not be seeing friends or whatever. This is a way for them to still be connecting in a class, but also talking with one adult that because they might not have a lot of adult interaction at home either.
All right, and then my last question is on page 13, referencing the grab and go meals that we're providing. I know that we have the government regulation that makes us have to give that food directly to the child. There has to be some kind of waiver during this time that we can look for so that
So
we're not.
they, on our conference call with the commissioner today, they have the waivers for that. I did speak with Ms. Schrader today about how we can disperse more meals. As a matter of fact, I talked with Dr. Miss Pagel, the superintendent up on the fort, and they are going to encourage their kids to come to our food program as well. So right now it's any student, and actually right now we're still waiting on verification, but it looks like that parents can now pick up meals for their kid as long as we can verify that their kids follow that, like that family pattern. So those restrictions have been loosened up and through June 1. At June 1, it would go back, it would fall back to the previous guidelines unless we're still dealing with the pandemic at that time. And then they would possibly seek another waiver for that. But the restrictions on those kids and how we deliver meals and have been lifted, and we will start following that protocol.
I have a question that leads into that, if I may. I happened to get home from work and I saw where another school district had already established the grab and go meals for kids. However, 2 of the adults who were passing out the foods contracted the coronavirus from the families that were grabbing and going, and now they've suspended all their food distribution because of that. Have we even thought of some kind of secondary plan? Should that even be I mean, it's inevitable. It passes on like as easily as a cold.
So to answer your question on what our like our secondary plan would be, our first one would be to adjust staffing as needed. You know, if it's found that it was quarantine, you know, that's part of the reason why the restrictions were the way they were, but we're finding more kids aren't able to eat with those restrictions. So they have lifted that, which you still have accountability, but the direct, I know that Miss Murphy's grabbed three meals, that type of deal, to where we know the contact with that. That's a challenge that's a challenge for every district. It's a challenge theoretically for every restaurant that does curbside. One thing that the commissioner did tell us today is that food and the process of food right now, there's no verified person that's been diagnosed with the COVID-19 that has received it from food itself. So we would adjust staffing as necessary and hopefully be able to continue to produce. If it got to a point where it went through our kitchen or we didn't have the staff, we would have to suspend it as well, or possibly contract or work on some delivery models from other districts that could help us in that. So right now, Ms. Murphy, a lot of this is
It's fluid and in the air.
we're fluid, and you know, even this waiver application that the state's requiring, it's a guideline to guide us through this. It's going to be fluid, and we're going to make some alterations based on once we get it fully implemented, we're going to probably see some pockets that need addressed. Going back to Miss Wells, you know, the things that she identified. If we have to find it in that time frame where we need to pull back or we need to add to, we have that flexibility to do that. This is strictly a guideline that says we're meeting the minimum standards. We can set those however we want. And fortunately for us at this point in time, we got great staff, we got great teachers, we got great support staff. And, you know, our goal is to give our kids the best opportunity to continue their education on a platform that best fits their needs. And so this does allow some flexibility as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the continuous learning
I
plan?
would just, Mr. Darling, I'd like to reiterate how much our teachers and principals and our teaching and learning team and how much time they spent working across their colleagues and across the state, and the flexibility that our teachers have given in this really is very humbling, because this is all new, and it's, so as some people have referred to it, some of this is building an airplane in the sky type deal. And if it wouldn't be for the compassion of the people that work in this district and across the state, from Dr. Watson and his team, this type of stuff I don't think would be possible as quickly of a turnaround as it was.
I have talking about that because they have been tremendously busy with trying to put this together, and my kids in 2 districts. So I'm seeing it from all angles right now, just the dedication and hard work involved in all this. One of the other things that I have heard conversation, it's not necessarily within our district, it could be the district next to ours, where our teachers are accessing their own computers. And I know Spectrum has offered free internet for kids and I think educators. If an educator already had a standpoint of wherever they were paying for their streaming or whatever, and that's where their budget had it, but to accommodate everything they have to do, they may have to turn around and up their speeds, and they have to pay additional to up their speeds to be able to accommodate all that. Are we allowing some kind of buffer to reimburse them on that, or is that just falling back on to
Right
them?
now, that isn't an approved expense from the state. We can't get into the personal expenditures. If one of the things that Brian Harrod, who's done a phenomenal job on the technology, and his team as well, he's ordering some hot spots and things where if a teacher really gets into a bind, there's a chance they can check out a hotspot from the district.
Okay.
But we wouldn't have enough for everybody. But most educators, bandwidth will be able to handle what we have. And, you know, we're trying to adjust for anybody that would not fall within that to the best that we can. We've also opened up our parking lots to where if they can't get in the building, that most of our buildings are able to catch a Wi-Fi hotspot in order to download or do whatever you need from a parking lot. So you
Okay.
would still be able to have self-isolation and the social distancing if necessary. We've also talked about possibly once we get into this, if we see some parts of the community that didn't have it, and we can add a hotspot to that area via one of our school vehicles or something like that. We've looked into that as well. So until we actually get into the plan and see where some challenges are, that's when we'll start making some adjustments with that. And I'll have a better understanding of that probably in the April board meeting to be able to talk through some of the challenges that we've seen up to this point.
Right. Well, and I just know, you know, we have the recommendations of everybody living within the district, except for whoever's been grandfathered or whatever. And I know there's always a remote possibility. One of our educators could be out there in Timbuktu County line that may not have the kind of speeds or the cable company. So I was just kind of curious on how we would navigate that.
Right. That's why we were trying to make sure signals hit our parking lots to where not only our staff
So they could
members,
just drive out of there and work out of their parking lot.
if that's what was needed, they would be able to do that, including our
Okay.
families as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, on the continuous learning thing, there's 2 resolutions, if I'm not mistaken, that we need to vote on. The first one is resolution of board regarding payments during emergency school closings.
Yeah, Mr.
Do we need to go ahead and read the things out? I think we do, right?
That would probably be best, yes,
Yeah.
just so they know
Okay.
what they're doing. And I can, so the first one, we would be doing a resolution for the board, this local school board, for suspending the board policy for graduation requirements.
Okay. you
And
want
all that
to-
is that you're not suspending, like, they don't have to have most of our graduates will still fall under the number of credits
hour.
that are already in policy. But what this does is also allows, if any student would fall short, could go back to the state requirement of 19. So anyway, that's all that one is. And then the other one is just a resolution to be able to pay all of our employees as per the mandate of the State Department, as well as Governor Kelly's initiative.
Okay, so let me go ahead and read resolution 19/20-018, resolution for suspending board policy IHF graduation requirements. It resolved that all credit requirements above and beyond those minimum required credits set by the Kansas State Department of Education, which are contained in Board of Education policy IHF, adopted in July 2009, be suspended for graduating class of 2020. Students must meet all standards set out in KAR 91-31-35 unless otherwise modified by the Kansas State Board of Education or the Kansas State Department of Education, qualify for graduation in May 2020. And I'll need a motion on that.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to approve resolution 19/20-018 for the suspension of the board policy of IHF graduation requirements.
Okay, we've got a motion from Mrs. Murphy.
Second?
That was Mrs. Price, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, this is a kind of a new way of doing things. I can't really necessarily tell. It's all coming out of one speaker. All right, any further discussion? Okay, raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7-0. Thank you. All right, and Brenda sent out links where we electronically signed it, so you guys need to go back in your emails and click on that link and electronically sign it after that. Okay, going on to resolution 19/20-017, resolution of the board regarding wage payments during emergency school closings. This is to take care of everybody as per state guidance. Whereas the board is authorized to expend funds of the Leavenworth USD 453 for purposes necessary in the conduct of the public schools is determined by the board. Whereas the board acknowledges that during an emergency closing, most district employees are instructed not to report for work. Whereas the board finds that a need exists to address wage payments for employees who are idled resulting from an order by the Superintendent Board, Kansas Governor Laura Kelly, Leavenworth County Health Department, in conjunction with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the Kansas State Department of Education, resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020. Whereas the board determines that the employees who are instructed not to report to work may suffer a loss of pay. The district or its attendance centers are closed. Whereas Kansas legislature has declared in House Substitute for Senate Bill 142 its intent that any school district applying for a waiver in the mandatory school term under KSA 72-3117 and amendments thereto shall continue to pay all currently hourly employees during times of closure. And whereas the board concludes that continuing wage payments to all regular employees, both salaried and hourly, who suffer a loss in pay due to an emergency closing serves the public purposes of maintaining morale, reducing turnover, and ensuring continuity of district staffing when schools reopen. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Education Leavenworth Unified School District 453 authorized continued wage payments to all regular employees, including regular salaried and hourly employees, and employees under current contract with the board are instructed not to report to work on days they would otherwise be required to be working during emergency closing. The authority granted by this resolution is continue wage payments to idle employees is effective for a period of March 23, 2020 through June 30, 2020, unless the board takes action to authorize payments during a longer duration. Adopted this if we approve it. 30th day of March 2020 by USB 453 Board of Education.
Mr.
Just to-
President,
Ms. Murphy, hang on, let me do an
Yeah.
explanation on that.
Yeah.
And that is just for the expected hours that were scheduled to work. So if an employee wasn't scheduled to work beyond May 13th or May 15th, it doesn't extend to them until June 30th, only during the time that they were expected to work.
okay. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 19/20-017, the resolution of the board regarding wage payments during emergency school closings.
Second, this is Jack.
Okay, we have a motion from Mrs. Murphy and a second by Mr. Goodman. Any further discussion?
Yeah, this is Mike. I do have one question on this. This takes care of the immediate need, but when we get 30 to 45 days down the road, are we planning on a follow-up if we have to make other decisions on extending payroll or certain positions? Kind of what are we looking in the follow-on to this before we sign it?
So that's a good question, and it's come up in our Zoom meetings with the commissioner as well. Mr. Dennis, one of the things that they talked about is it's all going to be dependent upon what federal and state guidelines are at the time of, like, once we get to May 1st, because everything is closed now through April 30th, or the stay-at-home orders through April 30th. They'll reevaluate if this would extend beyond they would issue, and we would have to do an additional resolution to extend it beyond the 30th based on the information.
30th of
given.
May.
Right. The 30th
Because the
of June,
governor's-
because this one carries us
Yeah.
to June 30th for our
30th.
12-month employees. If it would extend beyond June 30th, we would have to have an extension to that and a resolution approved by you as a Board of Education.
Okay,
In
thanks.
the 90 days between now and 30 June, we ought to have a better sense of where it's going. There's lots of different theories out there. We don't have time to talk about those tonight. So any further discussion?
And just, can we get one, just for the record, Mr. Darling, approval of the waiver to be sent to the State Board of Education?
Okay, we'll have another one after that. But these two resolutions I know. So all those in favor of resolution 19/20-017, continuation of pay, raise a hand. I see 7-0. Thank you very much. And last but not least,
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the waiver to do all the online study.
Hey, Jack.
Second,
okay, Mrs. Murphy has made a motion on the waiver. We have a second.
second,
Okay, Mr. Goodman has seconded. Any discussion among board members? None. All those in favor, raise a hand. We got 7-0. Thank you. So now we go back to, and I've got some signatures I got to do on that one too.
Right.
Continuous district operations. And we're
So
gonna-
I just wanted to make the Board of Education aware of kind of where we stand as a district. First of all, I want to say how appreciative I am of the Leavenworth County Health Department. They've been very communicative during this entire process. They've worked well with all the districts, including USD 453. I know that they're in a tough spot, but ultimately they're looking at the overall protection of all citizens of the county. And so as those numbers increase, they have the ability to do some further restrictions based on whatever information that they have. So Jamie's done a nice job communicating that with us as a school district. We're in unprecedented times. And so one of the things, we went from 500 to 250 to 50 to 30, now to 10. Used to be 10 in a building now, or 10 in a classroom or a small area. Now it's 10 in a building. We are adhering to all of that to the best of our abilities. Anything that we have question on, either one of us, either Jake or myself or Matt, we've reached out, and possibly some other admin that I'm not even sure, but have reached out to get clarification on what we're trying to do. So with that, one of the things that we've done is we've put the district, basically, each principal has the ability to work with staff in groups of 10 or less, as long as they don't interchange or mix, and we have 5 and 5 coming in all the time. It's a stagnant group, and we try to stay to that. District office wide, I'm here every day, and Amy's here every day, but everyone else is on kind of a schedule where I have them coming in periodically to make sure that we don't lose anything in transitions or lapse, or that from bills to payroll to returning messages to parents as quickly as we can, to try to keep the functionality of the district as much as possible. Matt's got his maintenance crew, as long as they're outside, they're functioning pretty much on a normal schedule. His custodial crew and things like that, they've been coming in on alternate schedules. Some have even worked late into the night or early mornings to be able to accomplish the thing of keeping the touch surfaces and as much product to help fight this virus on surfaces and stuff like that as much as possible. We've been adhering to all of the social distancing. Any meetings we've had, we've either done them through Zoom or we've had them in a room where we're sitting 6 foot apart. So I tell you that because as long as we have no further restrictions, we'll probably stay that course through the completion of the school year, and then make some adjustments after that. Or if they get further restrictions, I would have to restrict what we're doing, and we would communicate that out. Our goal is to keep the district as functioning as possible during this time, because it gives some foundation to people to reach out to us, to be able to communicate with us, especially as all this starts getting rolled out. We're going to see some challenges, and I understand that, and we want to be here and be as responsive as possible to our community. And so unless you as a board give further instructions to restrict that, we'll kind of just follow what the county health officer is giving us as far as the flexibility to continue to do what we do.
Well, thank you. Anybody else have any other comments?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Mike, when in your talk with the emergency preparedness people, is there any thoughts about downrange if it's worst case scenario, if we might be able to let one of our buildings be like a temporary hospital?
Jake, can you unmute
crazy,
Amy? Amy has that answer for you, Mr. Carney.
Okay.
Now you can.
So we are a part of the Leavenworth County MOU. And so we actually have 2 different things in their plan. One would be a point of distribution, a drive-through at Richard Warren Middle School, but also Leavenworth High School is a part of their MOU in the event that they need to do a point of distribution in the actual physical building. So that building has been earmarked.
I got a second question too, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So once the air clears, are we looking at maybe some potential temporary hires like psychologists and sociologists for the next school year and maybe 2 years beyond or whatever?
As far as
people are I think is gonna need some help.
That's something we haven't discussed, but we definitely can with recommendations of the state and also what we get, the feedback that we receive from our families. We're constantly going to be getting feedback from our families with regards to when we, start implementing this plan through communication, those advisory meetings, and Mrs. Lentz said, through the communication parents provide to our admin. And if there's a need, then obviously we would come to you as a board and ask for that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, but I mean, I just think we always talk about our diverse population and there's my grandkids are fortunate because me and my wife have been with them quite a bit. And I don't know if a lot of kids have that support, and I'm just thinking there might be a need down the road.
Mr. Darling,
Everybody- how their kids are feeling about it, but who knows what the underlying effects are. We're not professionals, so I think it'd be.
Al, do you have a comment?
Pardon me?
yeah,
No,
I
Mr.
think Mr. Carney has a good point, but I look at it just slightly differently. And that is the question of medical personnel, additional nurse practitioners, that type of thing. We already know, based on the profile of this disease, that we're going to have a second wave. We're going to have follow-on issues associated with it. It doesn't just 30 days, it goes away. And we may have a need as we go into September timeframe, may still be in the fight to have additional medical personnel, staff personnel to triage, if you will, as we identify people, because we don't know what kind of effort we're going to need to continue the isolation, separation, quarantine, even into the next year. So I would look at it from both perspectives, as he portrayed it, as well as nurse practitioners.
Yep, I agree.
Well, it looks like some of the test kits that they're starting to come out with do not require trained medical people to do the test kits. And that's what's going to be key in stopping this thing, is get all the test kits out there, because I think the rate of infection is far more than what we actually know, because of the mild symptoms or no symptoms by some people.
Mhm.
If you look at the Spanish flu pandemic, there were 3 waves of it. And you're right, Mike. We could easily see that. And what I'm seeing on the news sites is, 12 months for a vaccine to get just like we get the yearly flu shot. So we may have to do this. And the staff that we have in this district that Dr. Roth has put together is amazing in their ability to work together and see that this is not business as usual and make the changes that we have to make. And if we have to make it next July as a second wave comes through, or August, I'm sure the same high quality people that we've had working on it right now will continue to do it the same thing, and we'll know a whole heck of a lot more about that disease at that point in time. And hopefully some of those magic drugs that they're talking about hopefully they work. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. But I do want a chance to brag on Dr. Roth. He was nice enough to invite me to the 13 March meeting down there at the board office when the governor announced that everything was going to get closed. Outside of combat, I've never seen a better example of leadership on anybody at any time. And I do want to thank Dr. Roth in front of the rest of the board for the leadership he showed to the district administrative team, leadership team at that meeting. It was just amazing. It ought to be Cal ought to use it as a leadership study, in my opinion, up on the fort. Judy is smiling at that. But we made a great decision when we hired Dr. Roth. I've never regretted a minute, and that made me extremely proud of the district and of Dr. Roth. We will continue to be a little flexible. This is not their normal way of doing it, but this isn't, we haven't done anything like this in the last century. I was reading online the closure orders from Cleveland for 1918. A whole lot like what we're going through right now. So, yep, kids at home.
Yep.
One thing, it is giving us plenty of time to get Richard Warren edition put together.
Jake's going to put together a little slideshow, possibly by the end of the week, to send out to you. I was out there today. They're really doing a nice job trying to clean up. They still got some work to do naturally, but it's really starting to come together. It's exciting.
Hey, Mike, I got one question. I was out there today, as you know, and on the south side of the building, the intermediate building, are they having trouble with that flashing up there at the top? That thing,
It hasn't been put in yet.
well, I know that, but I mean,
Yeah, so they haven't indicated any of that.
Oh, all right. That's still talking district operations, so we're doing well. We may actually get a chance to start Lawson a little earlier because we won't have students there. So that's another thing that's probably looking at doing as soon as we get all the permits. Maybe
did
get,
we just go dead in the water? Or is that just my computer?
no, it's,
No, you're good. You're still live.
you're still
You're
live.
there.
Mike.
Well, mine just keeps saying my internet connection is unstable and everything stops. So I didn't know if
Well, if they get off their Xbox downstairs, maybe.
two of them.
So can I ask a question of Dr. Rose?
Certainly.
So I'm seeing a lot of families that are feeling extra stress because they're now thinking that they're having to take on the burden of educating their child themselves when they're still having to either work from home. We're not asking our families to homeschool. Can you please, in a brief statement, say what we're expecting of our families during this time?
So that's a great point, Ms. Wells. You know, it's ironic when it goes out on Facebook or whatever, and they talk homeschool rules and things to that nature, everyone believes that it's homeschool. The whole point of the Commissioner of Education, the Kansas State Board of Education, is to have the teachers still communicate, still teach, still be available. So as Ms. Lentz and all of our admin, but Ms. Lentz talked about, they're doing 30 minutes of instruction. Our teachers are still going to remain available during contracted time. Their contracted time just looks a little different, but the communication, really what we need from the family is just some support in general, making sure their kids are either logged on and able to log on and communicate with the teacher via Zoom, maybe it's via email, via phone call, whatever that may look like, or being able to get packets if they're not able to get on the internet and they would prefer packets. Our buildings are going to provide hard packets with work for students to do. They'll collect that work and bring it back to the building. So there will be some, exchanges back and forth, but by no means do we want this to be considered homeschool. Not that there's anything wrong with homeschool opportunities for families, but that's not our model here. But parents and families and big brothers and big sisters will probably be more engaged in this process than has ever been required before. But our teachers and our admin team are doing the best they can to communicate that. But we can't fight everything that's on social media sometimes. And but by no means do we want this to be a homeschool experience. We want to use the expertise of our staff to the best of our abilities.
So we're not asking our families to make their children sit down at a designed place from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and do schoolwork.
Most is 3 hours a day.
Right. The teachers will be spread out. So what the idea is that students can jump on, do a class, possibly do their homework, communicate with the teacher, and go to the next class. At our elementary school, they're doing a lot of pre-videoing, using the Seesaw platform to where kids can get on with their families or by themselves, view the video, do the work, and communicate along those lines. We don't want kids online 8 hours a day. We don't want teachers online 8 hours a day as far as physically like this, but we do want to be responsive during the contracted time that we have and try to keep the school day as normal as possible. And so what that looks like from each individual parent basis, they'll have to adjust to that. And there may be some trust factors that, you're trusting your student to be online or communicating during this time. Our earliest learners naturally are going to have more parental support than what they've had in the past. but we still can work through that as people communicate with us, which some have already started doing.
Okay, and so.
And the
when-
earliest learn, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when you say communicate with us, what is the line of communication that you would like to see happen? So parent to teacher, parent to building admin?
Just normal. So like if we were sitting in a class with 20 kids in the class, our first line of communication is always, we want them to communicate with the teacher first. We want to do it at the lowest level of where that communication or that relationship was at. If they're not justified with the teacher, they'd go to the principal. If they're not justified with the principal, they would come down here. It would be no different than a normal day of school. If they can't get a hold of somebody, all channels of communication will remain open, and we'll redirect as necessary from the central office if we need to. But ideally, that's why our teachers are online and trying to be available for communication throughout their contracted time.
I just want to give a final statement before we close off here. I'm assuming we're going to close off soon.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say I cannot contact teachers outside of my own classroom teachers, but everyone obviously knows that I have a great admiration for all of our teachers, and please stick in there. You guys are doing a great job, and continue to educate and love our kids like you always have. I appreciate you, each and every one of you, and our administration as well. Dr. Rowe, thank you for leading the way.
I'm only as good as the people around me. I got great admin, and they have great teachers in each building and great support staff through our classified. So I'm the one that's honored. So I thank you for that.
And Mike, do we need those signatures tonight or in the morning or what?
If you can have them if you can sign those by tomorrow morning, that way, if we have any issues, Brenda could get with you. But I'd like to submit this plan to the state because they're going to get a bunch of these and they're going to need some extra time. So since it's board approved, I'd like to submit this to the state tomorrow. So if you could sign those so we could submit that, that would be fantastic. If not, Brenda will be reaching out.
Okay. Go ahead and remember to sign them. And with that, unless anyone's
Thank you, everybody.
Meeting's done. See you later.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Ta-ta.